The first weeks of 2026 hadn't even finished unfolding when one story began to dominate timelines, search engines, and global conversations almost simultaneously. Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce. If you're hearing this right now, stay with me until the very end, because beyond the headlines and viral clips, there's a deeper narrative forming that most mainstream coverage hasn't fully connected. Why ET started with something deceptively small. A 7-second video, grainy, unpolished, and clearly not staged. Taylor Swift leaning in, smiling, whispering something to Travis Kelce during a private early January gathering. No captions, no official statement, but within minutes, the internet did what it always does best. Pause, rewind, zoom in, speculate. And just like that, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce surged to the top of global search trends, surpassing politics, markets, and even major tech announcements. This wasn't just another celebrity relationship gaining traction. This was the collision of two cultural powerhouses from entirely different worlds. Taylor Swift, the most influential pop artist of her generation, whose lyrics shape emotional language for millions. Travis Kelce, one of the most recognizable figures in professional sports, embodying modern athletic charisma, confidence, and authenticity. When these two names appeared side by side, the narrative instantly shifted from curiosity to phenomenon. By mid-January, international media had already labeled them the defining power couple of early 2026. Cultural analysts described the pairing as a rare crossover moment, music and sports merging into a single, dominant pop culture storyline. Brand strategists quietly took notes. Entertainment insiders began asking different questions. Not is this real, but how big can this become? What fueled the fascination wasn't spectacle. There were no public arguments, no dramatic reveals, no carefully staged red carpet moments. Instead, there was restraint, and paradoxically, that restraint intensified public interest. Taylor Swift, long known for guarding her private life after years of scrutiny, appeared noticeably calm, grounded, and present. Travis Kelce, meanwhile, showed up consistently, at key moments, quietly, without performative flair. That contrast alone kept audiences watching. As January progressed, sources close to both camps confirmed that the pair had spent the new year together away from cameras. No photos were released, no celebratory posts followed. Yet, the confirmation itself sent fan communities into analysis mode. Old Taylor Swift lyrics resurfaced across platforms, reinterpreted through a new lens. Lines about stability, safety, and emotional clarity suddenly felt less abstract and more autobiographical. Then came the moment that shifted the conversation entirely. During what was supposed to be a routine sports interview, Travis Kelce was asked about his off-season mindset. His answer was casual, almost offhand. But one word stopped everything. Referring to Taylor Swift, he called her home. One word. No build-up. No explanation. Within hours, that clip was slowed down, zoomed in, replayed across platforms worldwide. Headlines followed immediately. Analysts debated whether it was intentional or instinctive. Fans didn't debate at all, they felt it. From that point on, the narrative matured. This was no longer framed as a fleeting celebrity romance. Media tone shifted from speculative to observant. Coverage focused on body language, consistency, and the absence of contradiction. Every appearance, together or apart, was contextualized within a larger arc of mutual respect and balance. Behind the scenes, the impact was measurable. Joint brand interest reportedly surged, even without a single formal collaboration. Media exposure value for both figures climbed instead of plateauing, an anomaly in an era defined by overexposure fatigue. Cultural commentators noted something even more unusual. Public sentiment toward both Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce increased simultaneously. No backlash, no division, just sustained curiosity. And that may be the most important detail of all, that in a media landscape driven by chaos and conflict, this story unfolded quietly. Music and sports, emotion and discipline, global fame paired with grounded presence. The relationship didn't demand attention, it earned it. And audiences responded not with obsession alone, but with emotional investment. By the end of the month, multiple outlets had independently reached the same conclusion. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce were the most talked about couple of early 2026, not because of scandal, but because of consistency. Because every small moment felt unforced. Because nothing needed to be explained loudly. Early 2026 is still unfolding. Anything can change. But one thing is already undeniable. This is not just a trending relationship. It's a cultural storyline forming in real time, one built on timing, authenticity, and a rare sense of emotional alignment that audiences instinctively recognize. And if this is only the opening chapter, the next phase of this story may redefine what a modern power couple looks like. Stay close, because this is far from over. What makes this story expand beyond a single news cycle is how quietly it keeps growing. While other celebrity narratives burn fast and fade, this one continues to layer itself day by day. No announcements, no manufactured moments, just presence. And in a digital era where silence often speaks louder than statements, that presence has become the loudest signal of all. Industry watchers began noticing subtle shifts. Music insiders pointed out that Taylor Swift's recent studio sessions, confirmed but deliberately undocumented, were taking on a noticeably different rhythm. Fewer leaks, fewer cryptic clues. Instead of teasing the audience, she seemed to be living first, creating second. That alone sparked speculation that whatever comes next musically may mark a tonal evolution rather than a reinvention. Not darker, not louder, just steadier. On the sports side, Travis Kelce's narrative shifted as well. Known for his larger-than-life energy on and off the field, he appeared more centered, more deliberate in interviews. Analysts commented on his sharpened focus, his language more reflective than performative. When asked about pressure, legacy, or longevity, his answers circled back to balance, something he rarely emphasized before. It didn't feel coached, it felt personal. And that's where public curiosity deepened. Because when two people at the peak of their respective industries begin moving differently at the same time, audiences notice. Fans weren't just watching a relationship, they were watching two arcs subtly recalibrate. Online conversations shifted from, "Are they together?" to, "What are they building?" That question carried weight far beyond romance. Midway through the month, a brief appearance at a low-key charity event added another layer. No red carpet, no press line, just a moment captured by a long lens. Taylor Swift laughing freely, Travis Kelce standing slightly behind her, not performing, not posing, just there. The clip didn't go viral because it was flashy. It went viral because it felt unguarded. In a culture trained to detect authenticity, that moment passed the test instantly. Commentary followed. Not the tabloid kind, but think pieces, cultural breakdowns, long-form analysis. Writers began framing the relationship as a reflection of where celebrity culture might be heading next. Less spectacle, more substance, less explanation, more observation. The story wasn't being pushed, it was being allowed to unfold. And then there was the data. Search trends showed sustained interest rather than spikes. Engagement metrics remained high without volatility. That pattern matters. It suggests emotional retention, not fleeting curiosity. Marketers noticed. Media networks noticed. Even audiences who didn't identify as fans of either Taylor Swift or Travis Kelce found themselves drawn in. Not because they cared who they were dating, but because the narrative felt different. There was no villain, no chaos, no countdown to collapse. Instead, there was alignment. Late January brought another moment, small but telling. Taylor Swift was photographed leaving a recording studio wearing a piece of jewelry fans had previously seen Travis Kelce wear weeks earlier. No confirmation followed. No denial. The internet did what it does best. Slow-motion comparisons, side-by-side frames, quiet conclusions. The discussion wasn't explosive. It was warm, almost protective. That reaction said everything. In previous eras, celebrity relationships thrived on extremes, idolization, or backlash. This one seemed to settle into something rarer, collective goodwill. Audiences weren't rooting for drama. They were rooting for continuity, for calm, for something that didn't need to end loudly to feel complete. As January closed, international outlets echoed the same sentiment using different words. This wasn't just the most talked about couple of early 2026. It was the most stable narrative in an unstable media environment. And stability, it turns out, is compelling when it's earned rather than declared. Still, unanswered questions remain. Will this influence Taylor Swift's next release cycle? Will Travis Kelce step into a broader cultural role beyond sports? Will their worlds eventually merge professionally or stay intentionally separate? No one knows, and that uncertainty is part of the appeal. Because for once, the audience isn't being led. They're being invited to watch. Early 2026 continues forward, and with it, a story that refuses to rush. No climax yet, just momentum. And sometimes, the most powerful payoff isn't the moment everything explodes, but the realization that nothing has to dot if this relationship has taught the public anything so far. It's that authenticity doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself slowly. And as long as Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce continue moving with the same quiet confidence, the world will keep watching. Not because it's waiting for something to break, but because it wants to see something last. As February approached, the narrative didn't slow. It refined itself. The conversation around Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce moved from fascination into interpretation. People weren't just watching what they did. They were studying what they didn't do. No overexposure. No performative declarations. No urgency to define anything publicly. In an attention economy addicted to escalation, that restraint became the most disruptive element of all. Newsrooms began adjusting their tone. Headlines shifted away from speculation and toward analysis. Instead of, "Are they serious?" the framing became, "Why does this feel different?" Cultural commentators pointed out something subtle but powerful. This relationship was unfolding without asking for permission from the audience. It wasn't seeking validation. It wasn't selling a fantasy. It was simply existing, and that alone challenged years of celebrity storytelling norms. Behind the scenes, the ripple effects widened. Music platforms reported renewed interest in Taylor Swift's catalog, particularly tracks centered on emotional clarity rather than heartbreak. Streams rose not in spikes, but in sustained curves. Fans weren't searching for clues anymore. They were revisiting context. Lyrics once interpreted as longing were now heard as preparation. Not prophecy, but evolution. Meanwhile, the sports world watched Travis Kelce through a new lens. Analysts noted how his leadership presence intensified. Teammates described him as grounded, unusually focused, yet lighter in demeanor. During press interactions, he avoided deflection or bravado, choosing instead to answer thoughtfully, sometimes pausing before speaking. That pause became noticeable. It signaled intention, signaled awareness. And awareness, in this case, was contagious. Across social platforms, discourse matured. Fan communities, often known for intensity, surprisingly self-regulated. Rumors were corrected quickly. Invasive narratives were discouraged. The collective tone leaned protective rather than possessive. That behavioral shift alone became a case study in digital culture circles. When was the last time a celebrity relationship inspired calm? Then came a moment that never officially happened, but everyone remembers. A late-night city street. Blurred lights. A handheld clip captured from across the road. No dialogue, just Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce walking side by side, unhurried, slightly out of sync, then unconsciously adjusting their pace to match. No hand-holding, no grand gesture, just alignment. The clip circulated quietly, without captions, without commentary. And still, it traveled everywhere. Because humans recognize rhythm when they see it.by early February, the idea of them as a couple almost felt too small. Coverage began using language like partnership, equilibrium, parallel growth. The story expanded beyond romance into timing. Two people at the apex of success choosing presence over performance. In a culture obsessed with arrival, they seemed focused on sustainability. That's when industry veterans started speaking up. A veteran music executive described Taylor Swift's current phase as post-proof, no longer driven by the need to validate talent, numbers, or relevance. She appeared to be operating from a place of internal confirmation. Travis Kelce, a former athlete-turned-media figure, was similarly described as entering a legacy phase, less concerned with highlight reels, more invested in meaning. Together, they represented something rarely seen in real time. Mutual arrival. Of course, skepticism remained. It always does. Some critics warned against over-romanticizing restraint. Others predicted eventual burnout, citing the impossibility of maintaining privacy at that scale. But even those critiques carried a different tone. They weren't hostile. They were cautious, almost respectful, and that distinction mattered. Because respect is not easily earned in modern celebrity culture, as the weeks progressed, neither Taylor Swift nor Travis Kelce attempted to control the narrative. They didn't confirm timelines. They didn't deny interpretations. They didn't capitalize on the moment commercially. That absence of exploitation became the loudest message of all. This wasn't a campaign. It wasn't a rollout. It was life intersecting with visibility. Late February brought another subtle development. Taylor Swift attended a sporting event without cameras positioned for her reaction. No reaction shots, no forced cutaways, just attendance. Observers noted that the broadcast didn't linger. And yet, social engagement afterward skyrocketed, not because of what was shown, but because of what wasn't. Sometimes the most powerful frame is the one you don't push. By this point, it became clear that early 2026 wasn't just witnessing a high-profile relationship. It was witnessing a recalibration of how public intimacy can exist. The absence of chaos created space for meaning. The lack of explanation invited trust. And trust, once established, keeps people watching far longer than spectacle ever could. Still, the story hasn't reached its apex. There is no singular defining moment yet. No grand declaration. No dramatic turning point. And perhaps that's the point. Because this narrative isn't built on peaks. It's built on continuity. As winter turns towards spring, one question lingers beneath every headline and every quiet clip. What happens when two people who no longer need the spotlight choose to walk within it anyway, on their own terms? That question doesn't demand an answer yet. It demands patience, and patience, in this story, is the payoff. As early 2026 continues to unfold, one truth stands firm. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are no longer just being talked about. They are being observed, carefully, thoughtfully, with a level of attention usually reserved for stories that feel like they matter. Not because they're loud, but because they're lasting. And as March quietly entered the calendar, something unexpected happened. The story didn't escalate, but its gravity deepened. The volume of conversation remained high, yet the tone shifted again. What once felt like curiosity had turned into recognition. The public was no longer asking, "What is this?" They were asking, "Why does this feel important?" Major media outlets began framing Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce not as entertainment news, but as a cultural signal. Articles analyzed timing, maturity, and emotional alignment. Psychologists were quoted discussing why audiences gravitate toward narratives rooted in stability during periods of global uncertainty. Sociologists pointed out how this relationship contrasted sharply with the hyper-dramatized romances that dominated the previous decade. The conclusion was subtle but consistent. This story resonated because it mirrored a collective desire for grounding. Behind closed doors, the industries surrounding them adjusted accordingly. Taylor Swift's inner circle remained characteristically quiet, but patterns emerged. Studio collaborators hinted carefully at a creative phase driven less by reaction and more by reflection. There was talk of songwriting that leaned into perspective rather than pain, clarity rather than chaos. Not a reinvention, but a distillation. The kind that only comes when an artist no longer writes to be understood, but because they already are. Travis Kelce's trajectory followed a similar curve. His public appearances became more selective. Endorsements stayed consistent, but his language shifted. Less about dominance, more about longevity. When asked about the future, he didn't deflect with humor as he once did. He answered plainly, thoughtfully, as if aware that every word now carried context beyond himself. And that awareness never felt heavy. It felt chosen. One late March report quietly confirmed that the two had established a shared routine. Split between cities, structured but flexible, intentionally off-grid when possible. No photos surfaced. No leaks followed. That alone spoke volumes. In an era where proximity to fame often invites exposure, their ability to maintain boundaries became part of the narrative itself. Fans noticed the change in themselves too. Online discussions shifted from speculation to storytelling. People began projecting meaning, not fantasy. Comments read less like obsession and more like reflection. Viewers talked about timing in their own lives, about finding balance, about choosing calm without apologizing for it. The relationship had become less of a spectacle and more of a mirror. Then came a moment that recentered everything. During a globally streamed event unrelated to either music or sports, Taylor Swift was asked a generic question about this chapter of her life. Her answer was brief, non-descriptive, but her tone carried something unmistakable: ease. No deflection, no overthinking, just presence. The clip circulated widely, not because of what she said, but because of how little she needed to say. Silence, again, did the work. By April, it was clear that early 2026 would be remembered not for a single viral moment, but for sustained narrative cohesion. Analysts began using phrases like slow burn phenomenon and long-form attention. Metrics supported it. Engagement didn't dip. Interest didn't fracture. It held steady and focused. That kind of retention is rare. And perhaps most telling of all was what didn't happen. There were no exposés, no anonymous sources stirring doubt, no dramatic reversals. Even tabloids struggled to manufacture conflict without credibility. The absence of disruption wasn't boring, it was disruptive in itself. Because audiences weren't being manipulated into caring. They simply did. As spring advanced, the conversation expanded beyond the individuals involved. It became about timing in life, about what happens when ambition and alignment coexist, about choosing depth in a world that rewards noise. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, intentionally or not, had become symbols of a quieter kind of success, one measured not by reach, but by resonance. And now, as the year continues unfolding, one thing is certain. This story has not reached its climax yet. But it doesn't need to, because the payoff isn't a reveal, a ring, or a headline-grabbing declaration. The payoff is endurance. It's the realization that some narratives don't peak. They stabilize. And in that stability, they gain power. So the world keeps watching. Not with impatience, not with hunger for collapse, but with something far rarer in modern media consumption: trust. Trust that this story will continue to unfold at its own pace. Trust that not everything meaningful has to be loud. And trust that early 2026 will be remembered as the moment when two parallel lives didn't just intersect, but aligned, quietly, in full view of a world ready to believe in something steady again. As April settled in, the narrative reached a phase few celebrity stories ever achieve: normalization without decline. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce were no longer treated as a breaking headline, yet they remained omnipresent in cultural conversation. That balance, visibility without saturation, became the clearest signal that this story had moved into rare territory. Editorials began framing early 2026 as a transition year for public figures who had already conquered their respective peaks. Taylor Swift was no longer discussed solely as a chart-dominating artist, but as a cultural constant, someone whose personal evolution carried as much weight as her professional output. Travis Kelce, likewise, was increasingly positioned not just as an elite athlete, but as a figure navigating legacy in real time. And somewhere between those two trajectories, the relationship continued, quietly reinforcing both. What stood out most to analysts was how little explanation the public demanded. In previous eras, silence created suspicion. Now, silence created credibility. The absence of public clarification wasn't read as secrecy. It was read as confidence. That shift alone signaled a generational change in how audiences consume celebrity narratives. By mid-April, long-form journalism took over where viral clips left off. Publications explored how the pairing reflected broader emotional fatigue across audiences worldwide. After years of instability, social, political, economic, people gravitated toward stories that didn't promise fireworks, but reliability. The Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce narrative fit that emotional need almost perfectly. There was no will they or won't they tension, no cliffhanger engineered for clicks, just continuity. That continuity showed up in the smallest details: a shared flight schedule aligned without announcement, separate appearances that subtly echoed one another in tone, language choices that leaned toward gratitude rather than ambition. None of it dramatic, all of it consistent. Then came another inflection point. During a major industry gathering, a well-known producer casually referenced the calm era while speaking about modern creativity. He didn't name names. He didn't need to. The room understood. The phrase circulated online within hours, unofficially attached to Taylor Swift's current phase and by extension to the relationship itself. The idea resonated instantly. Calm didn't mean passive. Calm meant intentional. And intention, when paired with global visibility, creates gravity. As May approached, speculation naturally returned, but softer, more thoughtful. Would this stability influence touring schedules? Would creative output slow down or deepen? Would Travis Kelce's post-athletic career lean more into cultural leadership? The questions weren't invasive. They were curious, almost respectful. And perhaps that respect was the clearest indicator of all. Because respect doesn't come from mystery alone, that it comes from coherence. The story of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce remained coherent because it never contradicted itself. No sudden shifts, no emotional whiplash, no narrative fractures. Each new month didn't reset the storyline. It extended it. By late spring, commentators stopped asking when the peak would arrive. Instead, they began asking whether the peak had already happened, and whether it mattered at all. The focus turned to sustainability, a concept rarely associated with celebrity relationships at this scale. Yet here it was: sustained attention, sustained goodwill, sustained curiosity without urgency. That combination is almost unheard of. And still, the most compelling element remained what couldn't be quantified. The sense that this story wasn't trying to teach, inspire, or sell anything, yet somehow managed to do all three. It suggested that success doesn't always need escalation, that alignment doesn't require announcement, that intimacy can exist without explanation. As early 2026 continued to stretch forward, one thing became increasingly clear. This wasn't a story racing toward a finale. It was a story redefining, pacing itself. No countdown, no climax engineered for applause. Just two public figures moving forward in sync, allowing the world to observe without interference. And that, perhaps, is why the attention hasn't faded. Because in a culture trained to expect collapse, witnessing something steady feels almost radical. So the conversation continues, not louder, but deeper. Not faster, but longer. And as long as Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce remain aligned in this quiet, deliberate way, the world will keep watching, not because it's waiting for something to happen, but because something already is. As summer began to edge closer, the conversation surrounding Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce entered what many observers quietly called the confirmation phase. Not confirmation through statements or announcements, but through repetition. The same patterns continued to appear, uninterrupted. And repetition, when sustained long enough, becomes truth in the public mind. There were no dramatic reveals, yet certainty settled in. Media outlets that once led with speculation now wrote with assumption. Language shifted subtly but decisively. If disappeared, as replaced it, as they continue, as they navigate, as they move forward. The story no longer hinged on possibility, it rested on presence. What stood out was how effortlessly both figures integrated this chapter into lives already defined by extraordinary pressure. Taylor Swift, long accustomed to living several years ahead of public perception, appeared unconcerned with pacing the audience. She neither rushed nor resisted the narrative. She let it exist beside her work, not in front of it. That choice alone reframed how her influence was discussed. Commentators began describing her not just as an artist or icon, but as a stabilizing force in modern pop culture, someone whose personal clarity translated outward. Her appearances felt lighter, her public tone felt settled, and notably, the constant decoding of her every move began to soften. Fans still watched closely, but with less urgency, almost as if they trusted her trajectory enough to stop predicting it. Travis Kelce's arc mirrored that evolution in a different register. Coverage of his athletic performance remained sharp, but the subtext shifted. Analysts spoke about leadership beyond the field, about emotional intelligence, about the way he carried himself when the cameras weren't chasing him. His presence felt anchored, not reactive. That anchoring effect became a recurring theme in late May. A respected cultural journal published a piece arguing that the Taylor Swift-Travis Kelce relationship represented a post-spectacle partnership. The article gained traction not because it revealed anything new, but because it articulated what people already felt. The era of constant escalation was losing its grip. Audiences were tired, and this story, unfolding without urgency, met that fatigue with relief. Around the same time, subtle shifts appeared in how paparazzi coverage was consumed. Photos still circulated, but engagement leaned toward appreciation rather than dissection. Comment sections were calmer. Narratives were less invasive. The audience had, in many ways, matured alongside the story. That evolution mattered. Because when public interest matures, it doesn't disappear. It deepens. By early June, industry insiders began quietly acknowledging that early 2026 might be remembered as a turning point not just for these two individuals, but for celebrity culture itself. The assumption that attention must be fed constantly was being challenged in real time. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce were proving, simply by continuing, that relevance could be sustained without amplification. Then came a moment that could have changed everything. A rumor surfaced late one night, sourced vaguely, framed dramatically. In another era, it might have ignited chaos. Instead, it dissolved within hours. Fans questioned it calmly. Journalists hesitated to publish without verification. The story never took hold. That restraint was unprecedented. And it confirmed something essential. The narrative no longer belonged to rumor cycles. It belonged to consistency. As June progressed, attention shifted again, not away but inward. Discussions focused on values, on emotional pacing, on the idea that success doesn't always require proof through excess. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, intentionally or not, had become reference points in conversations about adulthood in the public eye. Not youth, not spectacle, adulthood. And adulthood, when modeled authentically, resonates far beyond celebrity. By mid-year, the phrase quiet power couple appeared more frequently across headlines. Not because it was catchy, but because no other label fit. There was power in the way this story resisted narrative pressure. Power in the refusal to collapse into tropes. Power in the steadiness. Still, no one claimed to know the future. There were no predictions dressed as facts. No timelines imposed. The story was allowed to remain unfinished, and that openness kept audiences engaged. The lack of closure didn't frustrate viewers. It reassured them, because closure implies an ending. And this story, by every observable metric, was not ending. It was integrating into careers, into public perception, into cultural memory. As early 2026 moved firmly into its second half, one reality became undeniable. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce were no longer a moment. They were a context, a reference point for how visibility, intention, and restraint could coexist. The payoff hadn't arrived in the form people expected. There was no defining announcement and no singular viral climax. Instead, the payoff revealed itself slowly, in endurance, in trust, in the rare feeling that nothing needed to happen next for the story to remain compelling. And perhaps that is why the world is still watching. Not waiting for impact, not anticipating collapse, just observing quietly as two lives continue, forward, aligned, proving that sometimes the most powerful headlines are the ones that don't need to change.